Hi everyone, Amber here with Yoga How To, and this week we are going to talk about the mystical experience in yoga. One of the things I love about yoga is it is so practical. It is a philosophy, but it does not require blind faith. Instead, it says, here's what it's all about, and if you want to get to know this yourself, do these things. And then you get results that show you and give you faith in the system and keep you on the path. So one of the ways this happens is as you're doing the practices, your mind, your actions, your thoughts become more sattvic, which sattva is a guna of harmony, peace, light, beingness. And as this happens, you will start to experience more joy and peace in your life. It doesn't mean you don't have bad days, but it means there is an upward trajectory, right? And so as that starts to happen, you are rewriting those subconscious imprints, those samskaras that hold you to seeing the world a certain way, to seeing yourself a certain way, to being and acting a certain way and thinking a certain way. You start to break out of those. The mystical experience only adds to this. It does the same thing. What am I even talking about when I say mystical experience? Let me get that out of the way. And I hope I haven't bit off more than I can chew. This is a really big topic, and I feel like I could say a lot. So I'm going to do my best to keep it concise. When I'm talking mystical experience, I am saying one of those experiences where you, the person experiencing it, would say that you saw or experience some aspect of the true nature of reality, that capital R reality, that greater reality. You saw a deeper truth. You experienced a deeper, bigger truth that ultimately, and this is why mystical experiences change us so much, is a mystical experience reminds us of who we really are, that big S, that capital S self, right? And that this little S self that's having a human experience is temporary, and it helps to get rid of some of that avidya, that ignorance about who we are, about what we think is going to last forever, that guess what, it's not really going to last forever, but that there is something else that does, that sort of thing. And when we get that shift in perspective that is so profound and so real, we actually are starting to overcome one of the obstacles to yoga. And one of the obstacles in Sutra 1.20, I think it's 1.20, is doubt. Doubt is a big obstacle. So the mystical experience is a gift in that it starts to help us develop shraddha. Shraddha is faith, and we all have some kind of faith. The question is, what is our faith in? If our faith is in the fact that the material realm is what's really real, even though we like these ideas around yoga, but we don't really believe it, or we like these ideas that we have this greater self that's actually joy, that is actually consciousness. If we like those ideas, but we don't really believe them, then one of the things we need to start to do, and we will start to do on the yogic path, Sutra 1. Wait, I was wrong on the other one. It was 1.30. This one's 1.20. And it talks about people who, beings, us, who are on the path, but maybe not really far down the path. One of the things we start to develop is faith in the philosophy and the system. And it comes about through practice and through our efforts, and mystical experience might help with that. An example in the Yoga Sutras where we are instructed to do a practice that can lead to a mystical experience is in Sutra 1.35. And the sutra doesn't say this, but the commentators talk about how the practice, like for focus on the tip of the nose, what one does that bring? A celestial fragrance is smelled. Tip of the tongue, a celestial or otherworldly taste is experienced. And this actually has to do with Samkhya philosophy and the way the world crystallizes into this world of matter as we know it, is that as we resolve it back into itself, we get into these more subtle realms. That's neither here nor there. But what happens and why the commentators say that this sort of thing is important and why it's even included in the sutras is it's stabilizing the mind. Why do we want a stable mind? Well, because when the mind is stabilized, we control our inner environment rather than being just crashed up against the rocks, put on the rack, I don't know, something like that. We actually can be better actors in the world even that way if we are not just at the whims of everything coming into our environment, pushing us and shoving us around, which is so hard to do. But that's what yoga is teaching us to do, is to develop that inner stability. And one of the important aspects of the mystical experience, such as if you were meditating on like the back of the tongue, the root of the tongue is, I believe that's odor. You would experience the subtle form of odor, which would be a mystical experience. Hopefully it's a good odor, I don't know. But you know it's otherworldly when it happens, apparently. And these are just examples. It's not the only way mystical experience happens in yoga. But it's given as a way, it stabilizes the mind, because when that happens, there's no longer doubt in you going, oh, it sounds good, but my body feels more real than this big ass self. My, right? Whatever the thing is, it all feels more real. It feels permanent. It feels more important. And when we start to have these experiences, we develop that shraddha, that faith in something greater. And that is the point. And that's what the commentators say on the Sutra 1.35, is that when you have this kind of otherworldly experience, then it rattles, it shakes up your current shraddha, your current faith system so much that you actually can restructure and have a new one, essentially. So to our old mind of how we used to see the world, that stuff might feel not so real, even if we want it to be real, even if we want this higher self to be real. But as we start to go inward and turn the mind inward, away from external experience and grasping and pulling things in through only the senses, as we start to go inward, we start to recognize the bigger reality. And then through our pranayama practices and meditation, we might have a mystical experience. A mystical experience is such a practical thing, because when one happens and we, a little bit of that, the curtain to ultimate reality is pulled back even just a little and it shines through, can be so profound and so mind-blowing that those vasanas, that conditioning, those samskaras, those deep imprints, can absolutely be shaken up and rewritten in a new way in that moment. And that can help us to keep on the path to deepen our shraddha, our faith, in yoga and in these practices and these things that actually do benefit us, rather than our old faith, which is in, oh, it's just a material world, competition driven, just physically driven, accumulation driven, all of this sort of stuff. So the mystical experience in yoga is something that is almost a bit of grace that allows us to really keep going on the path. It can often show up when we are sticking with it, even when it's hard, when we're having doubt. Of course, there are mystical experiences that all kinds of paths can bring about. And that's the thing with wisdom schools, is at their heart, we have what's called the perennial philosophy, right? They're teaching the same thing, just in different ways to different cultures, different people, different personalities, things like this. The trap in yoga can become doing it when you've had a mystical experience, then doing it just to get the mystical experience. And that, you can imagine, creates a whole new set of samskaras that could get us in some kind of trouble. And by trouble, I just mean develop a hankering for something that we don't currently have. So it takes us out of the present moment. We're remembering the past and we're reaching, trying to recreate that mystical experience again and again and again. And that can create a deep unhappiness in us too. So that's where coming back to the yoga practices of being present, of doing the work, and letting go of the fruits of the actions, the results are so important. All right, so there's a little bit about the mystical experience in yoga and how it can be useful to develop and reset, to shake up and reset our whole faith system. So it's not just that yoga is a nice idea, but it becomes a deep inner reality for us, but also to be aware of letting it become trouble for us, letting it become just this such a big hankering that we create an even deeper unstillness, is that a word? Unhappiness in ourselves because we're reaching for that thing that occurred in the past. Thanks everyone so much. Please do like and subscribe. And I'm curious, have you had a mystical experience? If so, will you let us know a little more about it in the comments below? Thanks everyone. Have a great day.